Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
The front of the church was down on the far end.
Fire rips through two Catholic churches, both on reserve land. Also,
it's wonderful to just get some sunshine again.
Enjoy the sun as long as you can and then go for a dip in the ocean, cool off.
as much of BC braces for a heat wave, there's concern it's getting too hot too early. And
oh, look at that. You see the size?
Harnessing the magic.
To this day, I still feel at peace.
In psychedelic mushrooms.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight in the South Okanagan, where two separate fires have ripped through two churches. As Renee Filipponi explains, both fires are considered suspicious and are on Indigenous land.
Well, just make sure nothing lights on fire.
In the early hours of the morning, members of the Penticton Indian Band spotted flames as a Catholic church burned to the ground. A historic building in ashes, a shocking discovery, but for some, the end of a painful sight.
For me, it was almost like a relief that our children aren't going to be hurt anymore.
The fire is considered suspicious and under investigation by the RCMP. Tonight, the Penticton Indian Band wrote in a statement, "We cannot speculate that the person responsible had any connection to the Indigenous communities in our region. All we can do is be there for one another in this unbelievably hard time."
If it was deliberate, our leadership, our council here, certainly did not condone that.
The church was used by Catholic members of the community, and officials say there is a sense of sadness today, but would not comment on motive.
It's a place of faith, a place where they came together to worship as people of faith.
It's one of two churches in the Okanagan area that burned overnight. Officials looking into the fire on Asuyas Indian Band land say there are signs of arson.
There was some evidence around the perimeter of the building that would indicate perhaps a liquid accelerant was used on the fire.
Community leaders say there is trauma in their communities since the reported discovery of remains at the former residential school in Kamloops.
Our people are so traumatized right now in the aftermath of the Kamloops discovery, and now the burnt churches. Who's to say, you know, there will not be other similar types of incidents.
For now, investigators are looking for any information about how these churches ended up in rubble. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
First Nations and city leaders took to the internet today to celebrate Indigenous cultures and traditions for National Indigenous Peoples Day. Celebrations in Vancouver included performances and virtual tours with the Bill Reid Gallery of Northwest Coast Art and the Museum of Anthropology, but the day was not just about celebration.
This year is different for us because of the discovery of those children in Kamloops. For us, it was more important to offer support to survivors today and to come together to show love for everyone who's Native so that if they're suffering, we're there to support them.
A vigil at the Vancouver Art Gallery this morning honored the 215 children whose remains were reportedly found at the site of a former residential school in Kamloops. People gathered to grieve and offer solidarity to those affected by the discovery. And we'll have much more on this day, as well as the ongoing debate on what to do with former Indian residential schools coming up. Okay, well, I don't think I have to tell you this, but hey, it's hot outside, and it's only expected to get hotter. Many parts of the province seeing 10 degrees higher than normal right now. Joel Ballard has been out all day and joins us from Sunset Beach. Joel, you feeling a little sticky yet?
You know, Anita, on any other day, you would be completely right. I would be sticky, but right now, I've got some of that breeze coming off of the ocean. I'm wearing my summer fun shirt. I'm feeling pretty good. But as for people who had to work today, especially those working outdoors, it was hot, as you've said. Now, there were also people who didn't have to work today and maybe took a trip down to the beach, and from them, there were no complaints.
It's lovely. Vancouver is usually all rain, so it's wonderful to just get some sunshine again.
January out, heat wave in.
Oh, it's nice to get outside, you know, being all cooped up and everything.
I've just been thrilled that we're actually having sun for the first time in months, so yeah, definitely out in the sun as much as possible for the next week.
And people are taking advantage, either on the courts, lounging out, or even...
We're trying to make a sandcastle right now.
It's hot. Yesterday, records were smashed across the province. The town of Hope hit 32.5, Squamish peaked at 30.2 degrees, and warm weather in White Rock, a record from 1983, broken with a high of 28.7.
This is the time of year where we're at the solstice, so the sun is the highest in the sky.
Thanks to an atmospheric ridge, Castellan says the hot weather is only going to continue. A few cooler days midweek before it ramps up again.
It's going to be really centered over southern BC, and it is going to be so hot. There is no hyperbole enough to describe how warm this weekend is going to be.
Good news, right?
Hopefully we won't have any forest fires. If none of that, then I'm happy with the sunshine to continue.
Unfortunately, they've already started. So far this year, there have been 325 fires. 7 are still active, around 90% human-caused. So the hope for rain is important.
We haven't received as much precip as we would have hoped this June.
Creating dry conditions.
Fuels in these areas are highly susceptible to those lightning starts. And as well, there's a greater likelihood that if a fire was to start, that it would be more susceptible to spread.
Which means doing our part to make sure campfires are extinguished and cigarette butts are tossed properly will be vital as we get through this round of extreme heat. Now, although this weather might be great for the beach, experts are still warning to keep yourself safe. That means find some shade, seek out some cool air, stay hydrated. And one tip I was actually given today, if you have an air conditioning unit, don't wait until the weekend to set it up. Make sure it's ready to go, so all you have to do is click it on. Anita?
No doubt. Okay, thanks, Joel Ballard, for us tonight. I want to bring in meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe now. Joel talked about that fire danger. So how worried do we actually need to be here?
Things are going to ramp up very quickly, Anita. In fact, take a look at today's fire danger rating. So we are only one day into this heat dome, and already we are seeing pockets of high across the province. As we heard, we saw record low precipitation this spring, and January is pretty much over. So we will expect to see pockets of extreme even in the next couple of days. But human-caused starts are going to be the main concern, with little to no lightning in the forecast. We broke records again today. I know Joel gave you a snapshot of yesterday. These are unofficial, but it looks like we did it again. For many stations across the South Coast, West Van, over 30 degrees, and Victoria Inland approaching that 29-degree mark. It's going to be very similar tomorrow. We're still under that special weather statement for above seasonal temperatures right across the South Coast. But after tomorrow, we actually get a bit of a break with marine air that moves in. We'll be using this term heat dome because it's catchy. And also, that's exactly what we're dealing with. This high pressure means sinking air. And so it's sort of a cap on the hot air we've got down below. And the longer this high pressure sticks around, the more it ends up sort of baking the air we've got close to the ground. And we've got 2 surges. So tomorrow, look for record-breaking temperatures once again. Inland sections of the South Coast will be getting close to the 30s. And there is a bit of a humidex out there as well. So through Tuesday, look at those mid to high 30-degree temperatures, I should say, and through the interior. Coming down slightly for Wednesday. Will still be warm, but as that surge pushes eastward, we get a bit of a break for Wednesday and Thursday, especially through the overnight. You'll notice that. But then Friday and Saturday, a second more powerful surge of hot air will move in. This is where we could be challenging all-time June temperature records across the South Coast, Anita. So I will keep you posted. But yes, it's like Mother Nature knew summer has started.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
There have been 229 new cases of COVID-19 over the weekend in BC. Yesterday's case count was 45, the lowest daily total in 10 months. Sadly, we did lose 3 more people to the virus. We're inching closer to getting 1 million people their second vaccine. Well, more than 77% of adults in BC have gotten at least one dose. 108 people are in hospital, 48 of them are in intensive care. And as COVID-19 cases drop and vaccinations ramp up in Canada, Ottawa is revisiting border restrictions. It's announced it will be easing some measures at entry points starting July 5th. The federal government is calling this the first phase of its cautious plan toward reopening. But as Ashley Burke reports, some are feeling left out.
As Canada's vaccination rates rise, Signs life is slowly returning to normal. But that stops at the border.
We've reached an important threshold, but we haven't reached the finish line. There's a lot more work to do.
Canada remains closed to non-essential travel and foreign nationals. But as of July 5th, there will be easing of restrictions for some Canadians and permanent residents.
Fully vaccinated travelers who are permitted to enter Canada will no longer be subject to the federal requirement to quarantine.
Everyone else is still required to do so and stay at the federally regulated hotels, even though a month ago an advisory panel called the hotel program flawed and called for it to end.
I'm heartbroken. I mean, I'm desperate to see my daughters.
Canadian Anna Marie Beckel said her 2 American daughters haven't been able to visit her for 15 months. Both are fully vaccinated.
I do not understand what the difference is between a fully vaccinated Canadian and a fully vaccinated American.
The big question remains, when will Canada open the border to tourism? Today, the government shared one possible way forward.
So one metric that Canadians can watch for is the rate of fully vaccinated Canadians that is at least 75%.
The government said it's also looking at case rates, hospitalizations, and ICU admissions.
Social distancing.
The airline industry says it's stuck planning in the dark with thousands of workers laid off and furloughed and no end in sight.
We don't have a plan, we have a puzzle. We have a series of piecemeal announcements and promised future piecemeal announcements on what may occur. And we're all desperately trying to put this together to make sense of it. And that is not the way forward.
The government also announced that non-vaccinated children will have to quarantine for 14 days, even though their vaccinated parents won't have to. The government says that's a way to prevent the virus from spreading at schools and daycares. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, many Indigenous people are in a race against time to keep the languages of their ancestors alive. Some BC communities only have a few fluent speakers left. For Indigenous Heritage Month, the CBC spoke with those working to revitalize their languages spoken across Vancouver Island and southwestern BC. And throughout this week, we'll be sharing words and phrases they want you to know. Here's a look at the first one.
Hi, my name's Ted Cadwallader. I'm a Tlingit descendant from a Quagils village, and I live on Hulkamatinam speaking territory on southern Vancouver Island. The word I want to teach you today is in Hulkamatinam, and it's a phrase. It's quam quam tun squalawan. Quam quam tun squalawan. It's sometimes translated as strong heart and strong mind, but one of our elders in Snanemoch, Jerry Brown, said his mom said, it means when your heart and your mind start working together. So it can't really be translated to English. And it's important that you know that, because you know that feeling when your mind is working really well, and you know that feeling when your heart is working really well. But when everything comes together in Quam Quam Tun Squalawan, that's the moment where we get great works of art and music and literature and love, and all things are possible. So Quam Quam Tun Squalawan. Hi, Chkasiem. Thanks very much, everybody.
We'll be sharing more words and phrases each day this week. If you'd like to read more about the languages and the people working to keep them alive, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/BC. And during the NHL playoffs on CBC, just a reminder of how and where you can watch this show. We'll be on every weekday at 6 p.m. online, streaming on CBC Gem, YouTube, and Facebook. And then we'll be on television after the hockey game each evening. Those times will be different depending on when the game starts and when it ends. And you can always stream our show on demand at our website as well. They are buildings that some say, by simply still standing, they continue to inflict trauma. What to do with former Indian residential schools? Next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Well, have you ever thought about how to be a better friend to Indigenous peoples? 16-year-old Isabel DeRoy Olsen has. Now, she's an actress, a dancer, and contributor with CBC Kids News. She spoke with two women about what it means to be an ally.
Whenever there's something going on in the news about Indigenous peoples, it seems like I'm usually the one that my friends, and sometimes even teachers, turn to for answers. I got the chance to talk to two experts about what exactly Indigenous allyship is, and how we can all become better allies.
I'm Larissa Crawford, and I am an Afro-Indigenous activist.
My name is Cindy Blackstock, and I'm a member of the Gitxsan First Nation, and I work at something called the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society.
What is an ally?
Someone who stands with you in the realization of your rights. So when you see an injustice in the world, even if it doesn't affect us, because we know that if there's injustice in the world, then it really isn't living up to humanity's full potential.
What are some other good things that people can do to be good allies?
We need to be taking action if we are to be demonstrating allyship. It can be looking like supporting your peers, going to protest, writing a really cool project, and researching and becoming more aware of what different people face, different people's realities, and how you can support them. But sometimes allyship is uncomfortable as well. So it may look like having difficult conversations with your friends, maybe with yourself.
Why be an ally?
I didn't tell my friends I was Indigenous when I was in school because I heard all of the awful things they would say about Indigenous people, not knowing that I was Indigenous. As you explore this idea of allyship, I really encourage you to let go of your preconceived ideas of who Indigenous people look like.
What would you say to someone who doesn't think allyship is worth it?
I would say that, if you can't relate to the word allyship, think about it as being your friend or your neighbor. And to realize that it doesn't cost you anything.
For CBC Kids News, I'm Isabel DeRoy Olsen. Chimigwech, bye!
That was CBC Kids News contributor Isabel DeRoy Olsen. You can find her and more work from CBC's team of teen journalists at cbckidsnews.ca. I myself love the content they provide, so if you have kids, please do check it out. We'll be back in just a few moments with more news. On this Indigenous Peoples Day, we got a chance to speak with a survivor about his time spent at St. Paul's Residential School in North Vancouver. Forbidden to speak their own language, 2,000 First Nations children from around Vancouver were forced to live at the school until 1959. Jason Nahani reflects back on the abuse and neglect he experienced at the hands of the people who were meant to care for him.
So we were taught that this was everything. The church was everything. Our people were nothing. I'm sort of glad my own children didn't go through all that. That was enough for me. It impeded my life quite a bit and still does today.
The Catholic school was torn down in 1959. And hundreds of survivors gathered this past weekend at the former Lejac Residential School west of Prince George to reflect and grieve. The three-day ceremony included drum circles and sacred fires honoring the 215 children discovered in Kamloops. Catherine Hansen was at the site to hear survivors share messages of anger and hope.
A sea of orange shirts as hundreds of residential school survivors, their families, friends, and community members gather at the site of the former LeJac Residential School, 140 kilometers west of Prince George. The purpose? To take part in a 3-day sacred fire ceremony to honor the 215 children believed to have been found outside the former Kamloops Residential School, and to help those grieving as a result of the reported findings and to heal from their own stories. Residential school survivor and Stillatin Chief Robert Mitchell remembers his time as a day student right here at the LeJac site.
It was, it wasn't good here at all. So there was a lot of strapping. There's not me particular, but other students, there was a lot of sexual abuse. There was a lot of, it was like a prison basically. It was very tough.
Drums and song, a big part of the ceremonies, along with traditional healing, grief counseling, and sacred fires, where letters and messages of anger and hope are burned at the end of the event.
I think there's more, there was a lot of fear for survivors to come here. Lots of fear because of their memories passing. For some of them, it's the first time coming back here. But once they got here and they seen that their people are here, their people are here to support them in whatever stories they have to share. So I think there's a little bit more comfort for them.
All a part of efforts to come together and to begin to heal.
This means a lot of healing for us nation, is to come together and heal our pain, because we've hidden our pain for so long, for so many years.
At the LeJac Residential School site, Catherine Hansen, CBC News.
Another reminder that reconciliation is rooted in now, not just in the past. Canada's residential school and day school policy may have ended years ago, but as Katie Nicholson shows us, for some communities it exists still in the roof above their heads and the floors beneath their feet.
This is the older part. This was living quarters.
Generations of children were subjected to nightmarish abuse in this Indian day school.
This was the basement where the kids used to be. Some of them were locked up for being kids. When you turn off the lights, you can imagine what that was like for being a little kid.
It's one of 3 existing day school buildings in the community.
Having buildings like this is just a constant reminder of what actually happened.
And while Chief Byron Lewis would love to knock them down, he can't. He's been forced to repurpose them for classroom space and band business.
We don't have any other space. It's the only thing we have, so we have to make use of what we have.
And it's not just day schools. There are lingering questions about what to do with residential schools. Children from the Birdtail Sioux First Nation were traumatized here at the Birtle Residential School in western Manitoba.
I tried to walk across the dining room to see my sister, and I got beaten up all the way back to my seat.
For those who suffered abuse in these walls, there is one answer.
But I want it demolished. I want it taken right to the ground.
But the building was bought by a private owner. He tells CBC he's willing to sell, but who will pay?
Everything's on the table.
Earlier this month, the feds pledged $27 million to help locate children who may have died in residential schools. The minister says there's money to deal with buildings, too.
There would be a budget for whatever is required, and we work with the community to be able to get done what they need to get done.
Well, I think that's something we used to hear that, or, I'm from the Department of Indian Affairs and I'm here to help you.
For now, the buildings and their dark, dank cellars stand. A reminder reconciliation still has a way to go.
The next frontier of legal drugs, why some researchers are experimenting with magic mushrooms, next.
I'm Ken Cavanaugh.
Until 8 years ago, Dan George was a chief of the Squamish Indians on the Burrard Reserve near Vancouver. Then he was voted out of office, but he remains an honorary chief. He began to concentrate on an acting career that culminated this year in an Academy Award nomination as Best Supporting Actor for his performance in Little Big Man. In addition, he won the prestigious awards of the New York Film Critics and the National Society of Film Critics.
My own name was given to me by my grandmother. My name is Tsatswana, and my other name is Nawanath. I was called up to the Shuswap country, and they made me an honorary chief of their tribe, and the name they gave me was Nawanath. Now, my other name was Hatsqawan, which means good-hearted. And this was given to me at a potlatch in North Vancouver. Those are the three names that I'd like to mention that I hold. When my time comes, I'm going to give it to one of my children or one of my grandchildren. Tasnachim chin wat quiet not tasbahim. At same chin, says I no mochin. Chow at chuch, no chase yam. O Great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the winds, and whose breath gives life to the world, hear me. I come to you as one of your many children. I am small and weak. I need your strength and your wisdom. May I walk in beauty. Make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things that you have made, and my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may know the things you have taught your children, the lessons you have hidden in every leaf and rock.
Health researchers in BC are trying to harness the magic in psychedelic mushrooms. The drug has been shown to successfully treat depression and anxiety. As John Hernandez reports, industry leaders are calling it a game changer in the field of mental health.
See the size?
It might be growing in dirt, but mushrooms like this could be the next frontier in mental health.
The study of psychedelic mushrooms is elevated now.
Numinous Bioscience in Vancouver is one of just a handful of companies with a government license to produce and study psilocybin. It's the psychedelic compound in magic mushrooms, and more people are using it as a way to treat mental illness.
I've always been interested in cutting-edge approaches, and certainly this is an area where I think this will become part of the mainstream treatment system for people with the common mental disorders.
Research suggests that psilocybin-assisted therapy can be an effective tool to treat depression and even tobacco addiction.
New connections get formed. People actually think about the world in different ways because the brain essentially has an opportunity to rewire itself during the psilocybin experience.
One of the problems I have, I'm hypersensitive to drugs.
Mona Streleff is one of just a few dozen Canadians who have received government approval to use it. She's a cancer survivor and for years suffered from crippling anxiety until the treatment last November.
My anxiety was basically gone. It just wasn't there. And to this day, I still feel at peace. I'm not afraid of death.
Tales like her are the reason labs like Numinous have emerged in hopes of making the drug more accessible. Here, they've created a psilocybin extract in the form of a pill. It's being tested in clinical trials.
It's very much a paradigm shift, and really, I think, the most exciting area in mental health and addiction right now.
A paradigm shift that could one day take these psychedelics to pharmacy shelves. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
That is it for our show tonight. You can always find it online, cbc.ca/BC. Our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock with Tanya Fletcher after the National. Have a good night.